Well, now that everybody's gone, no. Thank you. Thank you very much for, what's that? I do. I got to watch. I'll make sure to get you lunch on time. Don't you worry. Because I'll be right there in line with you. All right. Well, good morning, Texas. All right. You know, my dad, I'm originally from Canada, so I'm not from here. I've been here for a long time, though. But my dad used to tell me when I was a kid that if you're going to play in Texas, you know my dad. You got to have a fiddle in the band, right? My dad was in Alabama. No, so I'm glad to be here. Go Longhorns. Go Bears. Go Aggies. Yeah, woohoo! There you go. Go Aggies. Go Tigers. No, they're in the. Go Horned Frogs. Go. What else? Possums, iguanas. So glad to be here. I was here in TOWA. I was here at TOWA in 2014, and this is a big show. This is huge. I go to a lot of AWAs all over the country, and this is one of the biggest, if not the biggest. This is the biggest, really. North Carolina's got a big show too, but this is amazing. So it's great to be here. And today we're going to talk about riser access and safety. So, you know, first of all, my name's Claude Gauguin. I should introduce myself. I'm with the National Precast Concrete Association. I'm a civil engineer. And at National Precast Concrete Association, we have members who make just about everything. You know, they make walls for buildings, hollow core slab, beams, columns, bridges, pipe, manholes, infrastructure, stormwater treatment, wastewater treatment. So, so we have a broad membership that makes a lot of stuff, but we have a lot of members that make stuff just for the wastewater industry. Whether they just make septic tanks or they make septic tanks and grease interceptors. But we are definitely dedicated to the decentralized wastewater industry, and as such, we go around and we talk about various things. And this is a very important subject, because usually I talk about quality, or I talk about how to recognize a good tank or how to install it. But riser access and safety is also very paramount. And I appreciate the fact that the TCEQ and you guys are very forward thinking and have the rules that you do, because most states don't have a lot in terms of rules when it comes to secondary protection or protection against falling into a tank. So we'll go through that here in a minute. But first of all, a little history. Let's start with a little history lesson about septic tanks. In case you didn't know, it might come up at a party, you know, like, hey, what was the first septic tank? Where was the first septic tank built? Anybody know? Where? England? Well, we got a guess for England. Anybody else? France. France. Vive la France. Yes, in France. Jean Murat invented the septic tank in 1860, allegedly. He created an enclosure I think he did it out of concrete. Not precast, but concrete. And it started working. It started doing things. He couldn't quite explain it, but it started working in France. Now, I tried to look up a picture of Mr. Murat, and I couldn't find one. So I took a picture of what I thought he would look like, since he's from France. So there he is. You know, if he's not going to put his picture on the internet, I'm going to take a guess. So there it is in front of the Eiffel Tower, by the way. So he invented this thing. He called it the Murat automatic scavenger, a mysterious contrivance consisting of a vault hermetically closed by a hydraulic seal. This is the patent language, by a mysterious operation, and one which reveals an entirely novel principle. Rapidly transform the excrementitious matters it receives into a homogeneous fluid, only slightly turbid, and hold it.
It is not lunch break. It is not
lunch break. Yeah, welcome back.
11 o'clock classes are starting in Brazos and downstairs in the Texas North and South room.
There you go. There you go. So the vault is self-empty. Feels like I'm at home. Are we done? All right. So yeah, as you could tell, the guy didn't really know. Mysterious, you know, but and it,
Brazos is riser safety. It is not lunch break.
it might be. Might very well be. My mother-in-law. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. So, you know, so there it is. There's a little history for you. Now you know. Next time a speaker asks, you can say, France. Yeah. What's that? That's right. Self-emptying. So, you know, it's really an amazing piece of infrastructure sitting there right in your backyard. I mean, I'm showing a big centralized sewer system, but really when you think about it, it's a sewer system in your backyard. You know, very sustainable, and it does this pretty miraculous thing, you know, and returns it to the soil, and you know, so it's really an amazing piece of infrastructure. I don't think a lot of homeowners realize what they got back there, right? So very important to maintain, but also very important to be aware of, and it could pose a safety threat. So one part of that, and I know that's just one part of the whole system, is the septic tank. You know, whether it's precast concrete or plastic or fiberglass or what have you, the septic tank serves a very, very important purpose in that chain in order to take that material. There is some treatment that goes on in the septic tank. There is some treatment that goes on. There's some separation mainly. There's some physical processes. There's some biological processes, chemical processes that happen in the tank before it goes out in the field. But mainly it's there to, you know, prevent surges from going to the field, help in separation, help reduce TSS, you know, a little bit of BOD. But it serves a very important function because it's the very first thing in the chain, right? Usually the tank is the first thing. So it's got to operate, it's got to be installed, efficient, it's got to be efficient in order for the system to perform. Now, in order to maintain and take care of this very important vessel, we have to have access points. And so different states have different requirements, but basically you usually have to have an access point above the effluent and above the influent, and sometimes above the baffle wall as well, in a two-compartment. So the tank access is very important for maintenance, for inspections, and the TCEQ, the rules, and I'm just going to go over the rules real quick, just as a refresher. It says that the inspection or clean-out ports should be located over the inlet and outlet devices, and it says the smallest dimension should be 12 inches, right? So a lot of cases, you know, are they 12 inches or are they larger than that? Usually around 24 inches above the inlet and the outlet, would you say? Or just 12 inches? 16 or 20? Okay, 16 or 20. All right. Enough to get the effluent filter out, right? No. Okay. So, but would you agree, for those of you that have been in the industry for a long, long time, would you say that there's a trend that the access is exposed more and more and more? That we bring? No, I see a no. We bury them more? Yeah? Anybody agree with that? No, some of them say no. Okay, well, it depends on where you are, I guess. But, what's that? They don't charge enough money to dig them up. So, you know, it's from the feedback that I get when I talk to people from around the country, it seems like we're going more and more to grade, because we don't want to have to look for it, and there it is. So the risers to grade, whether it's just a short concrete riser or it's a really tall riser, that might be a challenge, the one on the left there, but or right, I guess. And but we're bringing these risers to grade, okay? Now, in Texas, the rule is that tanks that are buried more than 12 inches shall have risers, and the risers to no more than 6 inches below the surface, right? So would you say in most cases it comes right to the surface? Is that fair? Depending on where you are? Okay. It also says the risers should be sealed to the tank. So now we're talking about, and in here we're going to talk about safety, but we're also going to talk about water tightness, okay, and efficiency of the tank. Because when we're talking about the riser system, tied to the system itself or to the lid, that goes a long way to making it watertight. Because to have a watertight tank, there's a lot of times I would venture that the seams in the tank, whether they're mid-seam or top seam, are fine, but then if you're going to get any leaking water, it's at that riser. You ever see that? At the riser, right? So the first thing we can do to make sure that we have a watertight riser and a strong laterally a strong riser that's not going to move is to have it embedded, is to have that first section embedded. And that's great. When we can do that, whether it's a plastic riser or a concrete riser, to have that first section embedded gives you that ability to have that first watertight joint. You don't have to worry about it. You're not putting a sealant down. You're not doing any of that. To have that embedded is great. If you're working with a producer that does that for you, it's awesome. I don't think it's an actual requirement of TCEQ, but it just says that it shall be sealed to the tank. So how do we seal it to the tank? If it's not embedded, then what do you seal it with? It doesn't go that far. Some people do go farther than that. They say how to seal it. But if it's got to be sealed to the tank, what do you use? Ram neck? Okay. Tar? Okay. So like a butyl sealant, right? Something like that? All right. A butyl sealant, well, I'll get to that in a minute. But a butyl sealant works very, very well in keeping that sealed. Now, unless the manufacturer of whatever you get proposes something else. I know there's a foam sealant that I saw that was part of one of the riser section manufacturers. Whatever they suggest, that's what you should do. But for a concrete riser section, a butyl sealant works very, very well. Now, there are lots of homemade systems out there, or lots of experts. Like this one, for example. I found this on the internet when I was doing a search a couple years ago. Somebody was asking, any recommendations for a septic tank riser? I just had my tank pumped, and I had to dig up the access cover. I'd rather not have to dig it up next time. It's about 18 inches deep. And Just a Lurker, I hope Just a Lurker is not in here, by the way, and I'm sorry if you are. We can talk later. Most septic tank companies sell the plastic risers, but they're expensive. You know what I would do? A 55-gallon drum and a lid. Cuts down work super duper and can often be found for free. I'm not sure a plastic drum and lid would take the weight over time, but my steel drum is still okay after 15 years. So you have these sorts of experts. Now, how many of you, I'm almost afraid to ask this question, how many of you have seen the 55-gallon drum riser? Oh my God. Okay. All right. 55-gallon drum riser. Wow. All right. Well, not recommended, but you might say, oh, it works just fine. But, maybe if it's embedded, I don't know. I don't know. No, I wouldn't say. I wouldn't recommend it. I'm not going to go that far. So cast-in works best. If we can use a system that is made, that is intended for this, cast-in systems work best. Even if you're using a concrete, a grout of some sort to cast it in on site, that's okay, but it's still, the soil is going to move, the tank is going to move. It's the same thing as trying to grout in a pipe, which apparently has been done there too. And grouting in a pipe is not a great way to make a pipe connection watertight, as you probably well know. Okay, because the pipe is going to move, or the soil is going to move, and the thing about cementitious grout is it doesn't have any elastic properties whatsoever. So in other words, it only moves once. And then after that, it cracks, and then water's going to get in. So the same thing with the top. If you have a top and you grout it, but it just sits on the lid and you grout it in, then there's still a chance that it might dislodge after a period of time. But it's better than just sitting it there. Because we also want to protect against lateral movement. Now, I know that most of these tanks are not rated for traffic, but some of these mowers, have you seen some of these mowers? I mean, these mowers are almost like a vehicle, and so they take these turns, right over top of these lids. that's a significant amount of force when you think about it. That's pushing that, that can push that riser over. Have you ever opened a septic tank lid? Do you see like a quarter moon down there, or maybe a half moon? So I see a few nodding heads. So that's something that we want to obviously try to avoid for maintenance reasons, but also for safety reasons. How stable is that riser? So the precast riser sections, another thing that we can do, if it's not cast in, is at least if it has a keyway. A keyway that you can set the riser in, and at least it's got some lateral stability to it, right? And then the adjacent risers above it. And then you can still seal those. You can still seal those with a butyl sealant, but it gives it a little bit of lateral stability. Now here's the part about the joint sealant. So the joint sealant, the proper installation, and I talk about this in my 115 class too, because that's about installation, but real quick, if you're going to use a joint sealant, the butyl sealant, C990 butyl sealant is the best sealant to use, and because it's made specifically for these conditions. And the thing is if you're using butyl sealant, just do one thing: knead it together. Knead it together. It just takes a minute. I know if it's cold out, that sealant's tough, right? And if it's warm out, it's real sticky. But if you can somehow knead that sealant together rather than just overlapping it or putting it side by side, it'll make a big difference in keeping that water out or roots or anything else. Because if you just overlap it or you put it side by side, especially on risers, because you're not talking a lot of weight there, it can leave a pinhole. But if you just take a moment to knead it together and then lay it, then you're going to have a much better chance of getting a tight seal. Also, if you're looking at sealing risers, we're still talking water tightness here, you can use a joint wrap. Sometimes it's called chimney seal, but that can also be used on the vertical, on the riser sections, if it's a manhole section or just risers or donuts. Okay, so other than keeping water out, we also want to keep people out of the tanks, right? We want to keep people out. We want to keep pets out. We definitely want to keep water and people and pets out. So the access safety. So let's talk about access safety for a minute. First of all, what do the rules say? 285.32. Risers shall be fitted with removable watertight caps and prevent unauthorized access. So unauthorized access. Now, people are going to get into a tank by either a couple of ways if they're unauthorized. They're either going to get in it accidentally, where they're going to step on it and it's been corroded, or it's been somehow the structural integrity of it has been compromised and they fall through. Or it's partially dislodged and they fall through. Or it's not on at all and they fall through. So there's accidental entry, obviously unauthorized as well, but accidental. And then there's curiosity entry. There's entry through somebody's trying to get in because they want to know what that mysterious gray or green circle is, right? What is that in the yard, especially kids? I have a 6-year-old. I know how it works. They see that out there, and they see this shiny truck come every few months, hopefully. And, a guy sticks a hose in there and then leaves. What in the world is in there, right? So then there's the curiosity part. So that's a little harder, the accidental fall part. That's just having a system that is strong and that, that is not compromised somehow, that hasn't been compromised by UV rays or what have you. Then there's the part about keeping people that are trying to get in, at least to a certain extent. At least to dissuade them from getting in if they go at it and go, all right, let me see here. Oh, I need a hex tool or I need an Allen wrench. You know what, I'm not even going to bother. Sometimes it just takes that much, and then they just go away. Or they try to lift it, and they can't. But you all been kids at one time, and if you want to get in there, you're going to get in there. You're going to figure out a way. If the thing weighs too much, you're going to go get a couple other kids in the neighborhood, and you guys are going to come over and lift it. Or you're going to find something to cut that padlock. So in those cases, there's not much you can do, right? You can have a secondary kid catcher in there and everything, but if somebody's trying to get in because they really want to see what it is, it's hard. You know, that's a homeowner thing. That's an owner thing. So what I would suggest in those cases when I talk to maintenance providers is, or parents, is take the mystery away. You know, if the kids don't know what's in there, show them what's in there. Open it up and go, look, that's what's in there. And it's dangerous and it can kill you. Do you have any questions? You know, and you take it away. Then the mystery's gone. They've seen it. It's dirty water. Okay, they've seen it. But, you know, maybe that works for some kids. Maybe it doesn't. So that's, so unauthorized access. Now, the TCEQ goes on. That was Section 32. There's a section just for this. Okay, just for unauthorized access. I've never seen that in any other code. Prevention of unauthorized access to on-site sewage facilities. Secondary plug or cap or suitable restraint system shall be provided below the riser cap to prevent entry if the cap is unknowingly damaged or removed. So the idea there is to catch somebody, or at least provide some sort of secondary, restraint if the first cap happens to fail. Now that's not going to dissuade the curiosity people, but at least it'll dissuade the accidental people. So we keep harping on homeowners to have their systems maintained. So we have to have it pumped on a regular basis. We need access for the outlet filters, the effluent filters. We need access for the pumps. Extension of water-tight manhole risers to grade to facilitate servicing. Tank manhole extensions and lids can be a safety hazard. So these are the things that are pushing us more and more to having these lids exposed. And you may have had these situations happen here in Texas. I'm guessing that it has, for these rules to be in place. But, you know, it happens all over the country. It starts with a face, a little boy, on a newspaper or on a website, like this one. This boy, Burlington, Washington, a few years ago, 2 years old. His mother was unloading the car. She was looking away. He was playing behind her, and then she turned around and he was gone. She couldn't find him. She started looking around. Eventually she called the police. Police came. They helped her look. They thought maybe he had been snatched or something had happened. And then one of the policemen happened to walk by the lid and noticed it had been dislodged just a little bit. And they looked in and they found him, and he had died. This story happens way too often throughout this country, throughout North America. And it's an avoidable tragedy. It's just very, very sad. So, and then for that story, for every story, there's more and more and more. You know, you just do a quick search, and from all over the country. And it's not just kids, it's adults, it's service providers, it's, pets. It's something that, first of all, the homeowner education is critical to try to teach them about what's in that tank, a little bit about the dangerous gases that are in there, and the importance of having some sort of secondary mechanism in there. Think about it. If we have a swimming pool in the backyard, we get real worried about the kids. When we have a swimming pool, we have those covers in the winter. If we have a retention pond nearby, parents get worried. But then we have the septic tank in the back with all it's got is just a cover, right? So and unlike a swimming pool or retention pond, you can send your kid to swimming lessons all you want. It may not help in a septic tank. It probably won't. So here's a situation where we had 3 men. I forget where this happened, but one by one, it was a situation where one man went into the sewer system, was overcome by poisonous gas. We're talking about H2S levels up near 1,000 ppms or something crazy. So he was overcome, and then the second person looks in and tries to go rescue his friend. He was overcome and died. And then a third one did the same thing. And in a lot of cases, that's what happens here. I read a story about a man who rescued a child. He went into a septic tank, rescued the child. The child was saved, but he unfortunately succumbed to the gases. So if it's not the drowning that'll get you, it's the gases, right? Because those poisonous gases, when you're talking about inside a septic tank, when you have this digestion that happens, you have all these gases that are released: methane, hydrogen sulfide, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, ammonia. There's gases that are released that are very, very dangerous. H2S gas just by itself. If you are exposed to even as low as 100 ppm, you can get eye irritation, coughing, the symptoms. Up above 100 to 150, loss of smell. So that's olfactory fatigue. The dangerous thing about this gas is you can stop smelling it. You know, you don't detect it anymore. First, when you first smell it, you detect it, right? It's that rotten egg smell. But after a while, it's like, oh, it's not here anymore. Well, it's still there, but you're suffering what's called olfactory fatigue, where you're not actually smelling it. And that's even more dangerous, because now you're no longer even aware of it. And then when we get around 500 ppms, you know, it could be collapsing under 5 minutes. And then 1,000, when you get to that high, and there are levels that are that high, because we're currently doing some studies on H2S gas in septic tanks. So we're putting meters in, and meters are topping out. And these are meters that go up as high as 1,000 or 2,000 ppms. When you're in that kind of environment, it knocks you out. It knocks you out. There's no warning, right? So, very, very dangerous. Okay. And then when you look at the cost of, so when that happens, it's sad already that a life has been lost, but then you're talking about lawsuits. And no matter how you think, I did my due diligence, so I should be okay, everybody gets pulled into it, right? You know how that works. Everybody gets pulled into it. And at the end of the day, even though you may be absolved of any financial responsibility, your name has been in the newspaper accompanied by the death of a 2-year-old boy for the last 4 months. You know, so it's just not something you want to be in the paper about. But if you're involved in the cost of it, you're talking lawsuits of millions of dollars, medical bills, veterinary bills, or versus a $50 for an additional lid or $25 for a safety net. Now, don't quote me on those, but, you know, somewhere around that. So worth looking into, right? And kudos and bravo to you for having that in the rules. Now, can you tell me why it's in the rules here? Has it always been in the rules? No. Okay. What's that? Somebody died. Okay. So there was something that happened recently. Was it one particular thing that happened and all of a sudden it got pushed through into the rules? Okay. All right. Well, sad for that loss of life, but very, very good that you've got that in the rules. And we're trying, as an association, we're trying to get it into ASTM. We're working with ASTM C27. Now, ASTM is American Society of Testing Materials, and they've got a standard for septic tanks, and they have one for grease interceptors, C1227 septic tanks, C1613 grease interceptors, and we're trying to get language in there. Right now, they have it where you need a 59-pound lid. So, what's that? 59, I don't know how they came up with 59. I guess they had a test. Okay, try to lift that. 58, okay, he lifted it. All right, next one, 59. You know, somehow they came up with 59. But we're trying to get them to require secondary access, or secondary protection. So in the TCEQ 285.38, it says that lids should be protected against unauthorized intrusions. Acceptable protective measures include a padlock, a cover that can be removed by a tool, so a specific tool, you know, not just a Phillips screwdriver, but, you know, something that you'd have to go really dig around for, or something you may not have. A cover having a minimum weight of 65 pounds, and we went to 65 here. ASTM is 59, but 65 here. Or any other means approved by the executive director. That's what's currently in the rules. So what do you see the most here? Is it padlock? Is it screw? Is it weight? Screws? Okay. And how's that working? Is that fairly good? I see some nodding heads. What's that? The screw holes wear out. Screw holes. Yeah, so screw holes wearing out, that's one risk, right? And then perhaps even the screws not being there. Have you guys ever, I don't know how many maintenance providers do we have in here? Okay, there's quite a few. So how many times do you get there and the screws are missing? Right. So I'm asking you this question. I'm asking you for my edification, because when I go talk to people about this, I want to know. So when you get there and the moment you arrive, there's screws missing, what do you do? Because isn't there an amount of liability there all of a sudden that they're going to say, you're the one who lost those screws? Do you like step back and go get the homeowner and go, you know, there's screws missing here? What do you do? What's that? Try to get some screws? Oh, you carry them. Oh, okay. You carry them with you and you just put new ones in. Okay. Yeah. All right. Anybody else? We all got screws. You walk around with a pocket full of screws, huh? All right. Okay. All right. But you should tell the homeowner too, is what she said. You agree with that? Yeah, the homeowner, or the prior company that had it open, they should be held accountable for that, right? Now, yes, sir. So you write it in the report, and I think I've got it in here later, but yeah, in the rules, there's also a requirement, right, to write it in the report every time you open and close a system, noting that you've, right. Okay. So the options that are out there, let's talk about the options real quick about what's out there for secondary or even primary means of safety, or keeping people from getting into the tank. So there's secondary tank lids. So this is where you have two lids. You have a redundant lid underneath and another lid. You have systems where you have safety screens, you know, and I'll be showing you a few examples of that. Safety locks, and tamper-resistant riser cover screws. So we all talked about screws. Now, some of them are locked. Some of them have padlocks, or not a lot of people do that? Not a lot? Okay. So I assume with the padlock, it's, you know, then you got to have the key, right? So if you don't have the key, then that's an issue. But some of the systems use a padlock. Now, ASTM, as I mentioned, requires a 59-pound lid, or be provided with a locking system. So you have the option, okay? So in this case, you know, what some do is they'll make a lid at the same level as the concrete lid, right? Or at the lid of the tank, and then you'll have another lid up above, right? So in that case, depending on the riser height, then you've got to remove the primary lid, and then you got to get down to that secondary lid, which may be around 50 or 60 pounds, right? Is that hard to do? Or do you ever get into situations where it's, or, you know, to get down there? I don't know how tall these risers get here in Texas, but sometimes that can be a challenge, I'm sure. Okay. What's that? Oh, you got to carry a loop? Oh, okay, to pull it up. Okay, yep. So some systems are made to do that. There's some manufacturers that make safety mechanisms that are there to prevent somebody from falling in. So this particular product here, and I'm going to mention, and I'm sorry if I forget anybody that's at the show that has a product, but I walked it this morning and I thought I caught everything. But this is a polylock. They're at the show. You can go talk to them about it. This is called a kid catcher. And, you know, it comes in different types for different sections. Yes? Right. So they don't have to be screwed in. So these ones, what he just mentioned is the rules don't say they have to be screwed in, right? And I don't think most of these secondary attachment systems are screwed in. I think they're meant to be, basically they can't go down, but they can go up. So they're meant to facilitate maintenance so that you can just pull it out, perform your maintenance, and put it in. So these are not a deterrent like a lock, like a padlock and screws. This is just, it's a secondary catching mechanism, okay? So it's not meant to be a lock, right? So yes, it does come out. It's not very heavy, it's lightweight, but it's made, I mean, these are designed to hold, you know, 250, 300 pounds per square foot, okay? So they might hold me, I don't know. I'm not going to try it, but that little girl's safe. I'll give it a try out there later today if you guys want to come see it. So there's a couple of different systems. I just took that picture this morning. Infiltrators got a system at their booth. So wanted to show that as well. So they've got one. This is a system by Tough Tight. I know they've got a booth here. And that's the same thing. I don't know if those are screwed down. Now, it looks like there's screw holes there. No? There are?
Not in the rule book that you got to be screwed down.
They what?
It's not in the rule book that they have to be.
Not in the rule book they have to be screwed down, so often they're not screwed down. Okay, okay. A lot of home inspectors are making you screw it down. Okay. Oh, really? I wonder what they're citing as the rule for that. Is that a building code thing? Oh, it's for whatever it's designed for. I see. I see. So sometimes these are screwed down. Unlike the kid catcher, I think this is designed where you're supposed to be able to put your hose down in there and perform maintenance. Now, you know, so that's the idea there. So that's why it can be attached. Netting. Now, I think this is a system. I don't know if Gary's in here, but I think this is a Simtech system, and they're here. Now, the thing about the netting, or anything that has hardware, is that the hardware has to be able to resist the environment that's in there. Because that environment is pretty aggressive. So you can't just have regular, you know, steel screws in there. It'll rust away, get eaten away, and then somebody will fall right through that rope netting. Or even the netting itself has to be made of a material that's not going to be eaten away. You see the netting used around here? No? Somebody? I got a yes there. What's that? Okay. So that's a 4-inch pipe he put in there just to show, you know, the size. There's another one. I forget the name of this company. I'm sorry, but they've got a system of netting. That might be a Tough Tight. So that's a grate. I don't think that's screwed in. That's just laid in there. Here's a system from Brenlin, and it's got an inner safety lid. The thing about using something with locks is you got to make sure you lock it. You know, here's the handle for this lid, but the lock is just, you know, sitting there on a chain, so it's not locking down anything. So you just got to make sure it's locked down. Here's a system with a padlock. So multiple covers. So that one can have multiple covers in it, but it can just have the padlock system. Here's one that's got multiple covers in it, and I think this is a Tough Tight system. Here's a Tough Tight system. And this is a Simtech system. So like I said, all these, their exhibitors are on the floor. Orenco, this is Infiltrator. That's an Orenco system. So this lid is manufactured for a 20,000 pound point load. The thing about the plastic lids is that they have to be UV resistant, okay? Because the sun, if it's exposed to the sun for long periods of time and it's not made from UV resistant material, then it can actually be eaten away and can fail under pedestrian load, right? Have you ever seen that? You ever seen a plastic lid collapse? You have? Okay. So just make sure that whatever you're using or whatever your supplier is using is made of UV resistant material. This is a Quanix system. There's another one with these are with the screws. So different types of screws with different tools you have to use. And you can always use a cast iron cover. I don't know how many people use a cast iron cover, but that's another way to do it. It's just got to be a watertight cover, right? Because not all cast iron covers are watertight. Some of them are meant for stormwater applications. So, okay. Any other systems that I haven't mentioned here that you see out there that it's worth mentioning? Okay. Now, for those of you that are maintenance providers, how do you feel about these systems? Now, I know it's all good. Of course, protect the kids, right? Protect the kids. But how is it impacting you in terms of doing your maintenance? I mean, is it something where, you know, it's not too bad for the most part? Or is it's adding a lot of time? Well, okay. So your thing is having the riser, having the lid at grade. Above. Oh, okay. Above grade. That's what you want to see. Okay. For the reasons of, you just said, the grass growing in it, but also being able to find it. And what? Oh, fire ants. Oh, running in. I see. Okay. So bring it up above grade. Okay. What else? Anything else? Diameters, larger diameters? Okay. 12 inches is hard to work through, isn't it? Yeah? Okay, larger diameters. Okay. All right. Yeah.
One of the main problems you have, you got counties that no longer will let the homeowners take care of their own systems. And them's the ones where I go to, they're not gonna do anything until the system is broken down. And when you go out there, they have already tried to mess with it.
Oh,
When you find the screws gone,
okay.
the lid's gone.
Lid's gone. So what he's mentioning is that some counties just let they let the maintenance is completely up to the homeowner, right? So they don't, they don't maintain their systems, or the lids are either missing or the screws are missing. So that comes down to, how do you get the homeowners, You can only do so much, right? Get the county. Right. Okay. So you can report that to the county. Okay. Yeah, as long as you're noting that as you go to protect yourself, to minimize your risk. But yeah, reporting that to the counties. All right, so whose responsibility is it? So we're talking about, the precaster. What's the precaster have for responsibility? Well, the precaster has the responsibility of providing a system, that is per the rules, and that hopefully performs the job, but doesn't hamper the maintenance you have to do to an unreasonable point. Of course there's going to be a little bit of, we all have to sacrifice. But if it does, let them know. They're just choosing a system. Most precasters, we don't perform maintenance. So, if there's a system in particular that causes issues, then let them know. Or let me know and I'll let them know, okay? Contractors, or installers, what is it their responsibility? Yeah, they bear some responsibility in that, okay? Because they're installing the system. The inspector, the authority having jurisdiction, of course they have responsibility in this. The maintenance provider, it's easy to blame the maintenance provider. They were the last one in there, okay? So you're in a situation, it's a tough situation. I can appreciate that, because you get there and you have to document that, and you have to protect yourself, and you have to talk to that homeowner and say, there were some screws missing, this thing was open. You gotta make sure you keep that on. Who was the last person in here? Because I maintained this 6 months ago, but as you can see here, I closed it and I screwed it shut. So unless you're having somebody else in here, right? And if I was a parent, I'd want to know if somebody was messing around my septic tank. And then the homeowner, of course, the homeowner has to take a burden of responsibility. And I know, I'm preaching to the choir here. Okay, so the rules in terms of the responsibility, any person who accesses any secured lids or cover on an OSSF shall secure the lid and cover when the access is complete, and the reports must document that the access to the inspection or cleanout ports were secured after the maintenance and inspection activities. So it's a means to protect yourself and to be able to document that that system was closed when you were done. Now, in our best practices manual, in the NPCA, we have a best practices manual for on-site wastewater systems. And in there, we say, when it has a dimension of greater than 12 inches, a concrete lid should weigh a minimum of 59 pounds, like ASTM, or be fitted with a lock system. Where access covers or lids are installed at grade, we say a secondary safety apparatus should be used in the event the cover is removed and not. Now, this is not a rule, this is a recommendation. But this is what we want to see in more rules, and we want to see in ASTM. Handles should be provided on top of the covers, obviously, to be able to pull the cover up. Homeowner education, I know TOWA probably has a system, I'm sure TCEQ has a system of giving them flyers and giving them websites they can go to. There's only so many things you can do. You got a lid in your backyard that could be a danger to your children. What else can we do? So we by the way, have a homeowner brochure at our booth. We have a booth here, and it's precast tank specific. So feel free to come by, take a look at it, grab some if you'd like. I wanted to mention a couple other things before we finish up with lids. How much time do I got here? 15 minutes? Can I go longer? You guys aren't hungry, are you? All right, real quick on lids. So we talk about no traffic, but sometimes lids have to be traffic rated, especially for those of you that deal with grease interceptors. A lot of times those are traffic rated. And sometimes septic tanks are traffic rated. So what does that mean when you say traffic rated? Okay, a lot of times traffic ratings, they refer to the AASHTO traffic rating system. AASHTO is the American Association of Safety and Highway Transportation Officials. So it's a federal agency. The state departments use AASHTO for their rules. And the AASHTO has a bridge design specification, LRFD bridge design specification that they put out. And based on that, these loading codes got put out. I don't know if you've ever heard of H20 loading. Sometimes you may hear that. You know, we say, oh, it has to be rated to H20. And you go, what is H20? Well, let me explain that real quick. ASTM also has a loading system, but it's not used nearly as much. So the H20 in AASHTO is the same as A16 in ASTM. But what does that mean, H20? So what AASHTO has done is they've categorized these different sorts of trucks. Okay, this comes down to axle truck. H5 is a 2,000 pound per wheel. H10 is a 4,000 pound, and H20 is a 8,000 pound per wheel, 16,000 pound per axle. Okay, so that's what an H20 is. So if the tank lid has to be rated for traffic, then that means it should be rated for a truck with 8,000 pounds per wheel or 16,000 pounds per axle. That's the rating. Okay? And worst case scenario, that means the truck is sitting right on the tank, because that's the worst case scenario, right? If the tank is buried 2 feet, that force, it may distribute, but it dissipates some through the soil, right? So it distributes, it feathers out, but you're talking about worst case scenario, tires on the tank. That's the design. So when you see a traffic rated lid, you should see a thicker lid. Chances are, the lids usually have to be thicker. If you see traffic rated and you're still getting the same lid you always get, you should stop and ask the question, how is this traffic rated? Can you explain that to me? Can you show me something? Even the walls, because when you think about it, you know, when you got a tire on a casting and it's putting a load, that load has to be transferred. It's not like the lid just holds it up and then that's it, right? It's got to be transferred through the walls, to the base, to the soil. That's the essential, you know, to any load. It transfers down. So if you've got heavier loads on the lid, that means that wall's got to transfer higher loads, right? And I'm not saying they always have to be thicker, depending on the traffic rating, H5, H10, but same thing. You should ask the question. This is a traffic rated tank, right? If that's required. It should say it on the tank, right? It should be stamped. And one last thing, sometimes in life we have to make modifications, right? And I understand that. But when we make modifications to a tank lid, here's a guy cutting a hole in a tank lid. Now, if you go to an existing tank and you have to cut a hole because you're putting in some kind of aerobic treatment system or you're doing something, you're making a modification, understand that that lid was designed for the load, for the intended load of the soil and anything above it, based on that monolithic construction. The moment you start cutting holes, and I'm not talking, you know, an 8-inch diameter hole or something, but the moment you start cutting holes of this size or larger, you're cutting away reinforcing, right? You're cutting away some, I hope so. If you're not, then you better be asking some questions. But you're cutting away some reinforcement out of that lid, and you're compromising that lid's ability to perform its job. So what you may have is a situation later on that somebody's not going to be falling through the access cover, they're going to be falling through the lid. Okay, so this cannot just be done without consulting the precaster first, and the precaster should be involved and should get an engineer involved. Okay, because there's a way to do this, but you can't just start cutting away at a lid on site, cutting away reinforcement. Because when the lid's designed, it's got steel in it, right? So the whole idea of it is when a lid is pushed down due to a force, that reinforcement takes over, because concrete's not real good in tension. It's good being pushed together, but it's not real good being pulled apart. So that's why we put steel in it. Because steel, on the other hand, it's real good at being pulled apart. So the steel's in there trying to hold everything in. Well, the moment you put a hole in there, okay, of any kind, now you've cut out some of that reinforcing, and what happens is that lid is still going to take that same load. It's like you're taking that lid and you're trying to pull it apart, okay? Well, imagine if you had a piece of paper and you're trying to pull it apart, you're trying to rip it, and you cut a big hole in the middle. Now, where's that paper going to rip? It's going to rip right there where you put the holes in, right? Because all that tension is going to be concentrated right there on either side of that hole. And that's where you're going to have, now you have a lot of tension in a little space, and that's where you may have failure. So that's why when we design these lids, sometimes when we put these holes in, we put additional reinforcing around the hole when we're casting it to make up for that reinforcing we're removing. That's when we're casting it like that. When you're cutting it in the field, you're not putting additional reinforcing back in. So there's ways you can do it. A lot of times it's just easier to get a new lid. Believe me, it's cheaper, okay? But just keep that in mind, all right, if that ever happens. I don't know how often that happens, but. And precasters, wherever you get your tanks, and I'm talking concrete tanks here, of course, but they should have a quality control program. If you have any doubts about those lids or those ability for that lid to hold up, I was in a room like this, and I had somebody raise their hand who worked for an authority and asked me the question, is it okay if I see the reinforcement on the bottom of the lid when it's delivered? And I said, no, it's not okay. We don't want to be doing reinforcement inspections on tanks that have already been poured. Believe me, okay? We don't want to see the reinforcement. So she had been told and convinced that reinforcement that was sticking out below the lid, below the surface of the concrete, was okay. So things like that are not okay. That lid is a very, very important piece. The whole thing's important, but we don't want people falling in through the lid either, right? So using a precaster that has a quality control system that knows what they're doing is very, very important. If you ever have any questions as installers, as inspectors, as maintenance providers, ask it. And I don't mind being asked. I don't mind being the one. I'd rather know. If it's a member of ours or it's not, I'm going to try to help them, okay, if it's a quality issue. All right, I'm wrapping up. So a quality control program means they're using quality control for raw materials, pre-pour batching, placement, curing. I'm going to be talking a lot more about this in my 115. Little teaser for you as you're eating. Ooh, I wonder what he's going to be talking about 115. I'll be right over here, by the way. So rely on your local producer if you have any questions, or rely on us. So what can we do? We can put more stringent rules and regulations in, which we've done here in Texas. That's great, all right? Just communicate with the authorities and with the precasters on what works best for you. Tank manufacturers should provide a secure system. Homeowner education is important. Talk to the homeowner, communicate with them. Maintenance providers are the first line of defense, a lot of times, another tragedy. So thank you for doing what you do and letting the homeowners know and doing as much as you can. We have a lot of additional information and resources on our website at precast.org. That's my name, my number. And are there any questions? As people are already leaving for lunch. Look at that. We got a hungry crowd. Any questions at all? Comments? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good lunch. Oh, does somebody lose a phone? Okay.
Out in East Texas.
Right there. Okay. Thank you.
Number 2, the 4-inch lid. The depth in there.